Oh, you know what? I think it's a limitation of software. Let's actually rotate our devices because I have a feeling they haven't got the ability to do landscape. They only do it portrait. So,
Okay.
okay, good. Now we're ready to go. Are we live?
Yep.
I think we might be
29
live.
seconds, 30 seconds into it.
Jolly good. Anyway, hello, Susan. Thanks for being experimental with me. First ever YouTube live. And
Yeah, me too.
in spite of having to rotate our devices, we're here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. And it is tricky going Facebook Live. You think it would be just like one or two buttons, but apparently not. But we're getting the hang of
Well,
it.
next time will be really good. Anyway, we only just met auspiciously as Rahu and Jupiter went into Aries for a year, which is good for me.
Yeah.
And I think good for all of us, actually. So you are a master of not only dreaming, but wacky stories and bizarre
Yeah.
events, which is how I love my life to unfold. And so maybe, yeah, let's talk. If you could talk about how we came to connect and what you see for us, for how we're going to maybe work together or, that kind of thing.
Okay. Well, my son Gabriel connected with you, and I'm not even sure exactly how that came to be. He told me, but I don't exactly recall. But I do remember him saying that he had met this person who was very unusual and that he felt a very strong connection to you. And he talked to you for a couple of hours. He said, whenever he connects with you, these are long conversations. And he said, Mom, you really need to meet him. And I said, no, 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 no. Just because, you know, I'm the type of person who basically is doing nothing, and yet there is a swirl of stuff around me all the time. So he said, "No, you need to meet with him." And I thought, okay, well, if it's important to him, I'll do it. And and then I got sidetracked because I was in Sedona a lot last month. And anyways, we reached out. He said you're an exceptional human being, and I do trust my son's judgment on these things. So we met, we had a phone conversation, and both of us were trying to figure out. I think you were maybe in the back of your mind. I know in the back of my mind, I was thinking, what's the connection? What's the connection? This is what I do, with significant parts of my life. Maybe not when I'm at the grocery store, but if I'm doing something or meeting somebody new, I'm always scanning. I'm also a psychic. I'm a professional psychic medium. So I'm always like scanning, thinking, what's the connection? And I'm in my 60s. I've meditated since I was 13. And I have a strong spiritual connection with specific helpers in the spirit world. And a number of them, a team of them, are from a different planetary system. And my primary one for when I do the readings is a Native American that he claims he was my husband 5 lifetimes ago. I don't recall that, but that's what he says. And so I'm not going to argue with him, but he's with me all the time also. So, I mean, these beings have faces and things like that to me. So I'm always checking with them on things, and I'm saying, okay, who is this? Why does he seem familiar? Anyways, so I said a couple of just unusual stories, trying to see if anything was syncing up. And then there was one particular story. Well, given that you're a monk, I thought, well, maybe it has something to do with that part of my life. And so the story is a strange one by most people's standards. But there was, I've taught dream work for well over 20 years, shamanic dream work. And especially when I live back east, I've been out in the Southwest now for 5 years, but especially back east, I had dream circles all the time, all over New England. And typically there'd be about a dozen people. We'd sit in a circle, we'd share dreams. I teach them how to share the dreams. Then there'd be a portion where I do shamanic drumming. I have a drum, and I would get them into a deeper state of awareness, and they could go into a dream. So at one of these dream circles was a very nice man, David Wood, who was recently retired at the time. And I don't remember exactly. This was maybe like 2014, something like that, give or take. And his dream, I just recall it was something to do with machines, these massive robotic machines, and how humanity had lost living from their heart. And there was a small group of men that were fighting against the machines to reclaim the better part of what makes a human being. And I said, which I never do this normally, I don't tell people what to do. I have a policy not to tell people what to do. But this was an exception. And I said, you know what? Why don't you lead a dream circle for men? You need to share this dream. For me, this dream is about working with men. And and that can be the theme. You start out with this dream and let them share their own dreams. And he said, okay, I guess maybe I could do it. I have no background in this. I said, you can do it. I can see it psychically. And he said, well, will you drum? I said, no, I can't. I see it has to be a male group. I'll find you a male drummer. So he called me maybe like a week later and said, well, Susan, I'm working on this. And I spoke to my mother, not realized he's probably in his 60s when he's telling me this. He goes, I spoke with my mother and she said to do whatever you say. Now, this is a professional, educated, intelligent man saying, my mother said, do whatever you say. And I said, that's a very strange thing. Who is your mother? And are you serious? And he says, well, she's something else and she wants to meet with you. So I can't remember exactly where she lived. I want to say either Iowa or Ohio or something, but we did a three-way phone conversation. He was in Connecticut. I believe I was in New Hampshire at the time. Yeah, and she was in Ohio or in the middle of the country. And this lovely woman, now you need to know the background story on her. She back in the day, like in the 70s, she had a little gift shop in her town. She was married, had three sons, and was living a relatively normal life. And one day, her and her husband were having a cocktail right before dinner. I don't know where her kids were. And that's what people used to do in the 70s. They had cocktails before dinner. And the TV just goes on. And there is a Buddhist monk that comes on and says, and I can't remember her name. Let's say her name was Sunny, just for the sake of this. Okay. He said, Sonny, it's time that you stop forgetting who you are and get over here and help us in India. She said to her husband, what? What the? What's going on? How does he know my name? He says, this is ridiculous. There's no way that there's somebody's interacting with us off the TV. This went back and forth. And the monk said, stop it. You know what? I don't have time for this. He's like, we've got to move this along. You've got to have the purpose of your life has to be fulfilled. And we're waiting for you. Like the time is now. She said, this is absolute craziness. And her husband said, I agree. And with that, his cocktail glass, there was ice cubes in there. The ice cubes floated up, went flying across the room. And the monk says, no, it's not nonsense. And we need her. And that's it. The TV goes off. So they're thinking, hey, maybe we're drinking too much. Maybe, who knows what the hell? That is crazy. Like, let's not even tell people. Crazy things happen. We don't want to tell people. Anyways, a couple weeks go by. And this young man comes into her store and he's dressed in the similar garments as the man that on the TV. And she said, where are you from? He says, well, I'm from this part of the country, but I've been living in India for years. But my father just passed and I'm here for his funeral. She said, maybe you can explain to me what happened a couple of weeks ago at home with my husband. And she told him the story. And he said, this was a famous Rinpoche who had just died. And that, now I don't know how he was able to discern that, but somehow maybe your description of him. And that, actually, that Rinpoche hadn't died. That was another story. Because I have two of these stories, as you know. Another one is a famous Rinpoche that died that I did a reading for. All right. This man was alive. And he said, they have powers that just regular people don't. And I don't know how the jump was made, but before you know it, in less than 12 months, she's traveling with about 30 monks all over the world. She was still going home and being the wife and the mother and even running the store, but she would be gone for, let's say, a week and a half, couple of weeks doing these things. And she was tasked with bringing yoga specifically and meditation to the Western country, even though, Yogananda had been tasked with that as well. But maybe it didn't stick as well as they wanted. And so they trained her. She was able to recognize how she knew them in other lifetimes and that she had signed up for the job, right, in another lifetime. And at one point they said, okay, well, now that you're trained, we're going to bring them to your house. She said, to my house? How are they going to even know where I am? This is before cell phones and internet. They said, don't worry about it. We've got it covered. So let's say she was doing it on the first Wednesday of the month. People started knocking on her door. Like, she's like, what the hell? She'd get like 20, 25 people. Some of them would come from as far away as California. She'd say, how did you hear about this? Well, somebody told me about it. It was just very weird. She lived her life like that. So she's telling me this story. By the way, I find out afterwards. He calls me a day or two later and says she was in full dementia. And in the time period that she spoke with me, she became cognizant, which is just, for me, it's almost heartbreaking. Well, she had, he said, volumes and volumes of papers and written works that she had created along with the monks that were in banker boxes in her garage. I said, David, you absolutely have to get that information um, organized and maybe shared with the world. And I don't think that has happened. But anyways, so she's telling me this and she's just a sweetheart. And I said, well, why did you tell your son to do whatever I said? And she says, well, I want to say a prayer for you first. And she recites the Bodhisattva's vow or the Bodhisattva's prayer, which I don't have memorized. But as she's telling me this and reciting it for me, I start weeping. And it basically, the summary is for people that are unfamiliar with it, that I will reincarnate the Bodhisattva. Well, I'm not saying I'm a Bodhisattva. The Bodhisattva will reincarnate over and over, even if they can attain enlightenment and kick it back in a higher dimension and enjoy themselves eating bonbons. They won't. They'll come back lifetime after lifetime until all sentient beings have reached enlightenment. I mean, what kind of generosity is that? But I'm weeping when she's telling me this. And she says to me, now, Susan, I want you to remember who you are. I said, I'm clueless. I'm happily clueless. And she says, well, I want you to go to Kathmandu, that there is a temple there. They are ready to receive you. They're expecting you. You have to spend about 6 weeks there. They will house you. They'll feed you. They'll take care of you. All you have to do is pray and meditate. I said, what do you mean all I have to do is pray and meditate? She said, that's it. It was such a bizarre thing. And then she said, and now, David, she said it with a very authoritative voice, even though I think she was like a little bird of a woman. She said, now, David, you will go and accompany her so that she can feel safe, and you will be her chaperone. Now, he was not, he loved his mother. He knew the history of her, and that she was well respected when she was younger. Um, but he had no background in this. It's not like he knew anything about it. So we get off the phone and I said, well, I'm not going to India. But now wait a minute. Maybe I should go. But at that time, the thought, I didn't have the money, honestly, to take 6 weeks off. I couldn't shut down my business. I do, readings on, like, I'm like, how am I going to pay my mortgage? I can't go sit in India. Another part of me was afraid I may never come back. That something of my life story would keep me from coming back. And then somebody told me the airfare was $6,000 or something. And I didn't do the research. It's really not 6,000. Okay, so this has been kind of in the back of my mind. So I moved back. I moved out to the Southwest 5 years ago, and now I have time, and I have a little bit of money. And I said to my 3 grown children, I've always wanted to go to India. I think I'm going to go. I'm just giving you the heads up. There's a small chance I may not come back. That went over like a lead balloon, especially from my daughter, who said, absolutely do not do that. That's not fair to us. That's not fair to the grandkids. That's not. I said, well, I have my life and I adore my children and grandkids, but I adore my life. And there's a certain amount of things I've got to accomplish in this life. And so I didn't go mainly because I was afraid. And I didn't tell you this, but I did an initiation thing with Sadhguru right after I came out here. And again, I was afraid I was gonna go to India. Like I told my significant other, keep a hold of me because there's a part of me that's pulling me very strongly there. And if I go, I'm not gonna come back. So um so we're talking, and at one point in the conversation the other night, you said to me, "Well, Susan, do you see like are we meant to be just like friends from far away, right? Because you're in Thailand and I'm over here in the United States. Or are we supposed to do something more tangible?" Or however you worded it. And as you're saying that to me, I'm thinking, "Oh God, no," because I see the word Kathmandu like this, all right in front of me. I'm like, no, you know, I don't want to go to Kathmandu. I'm getting old now. I don't think I have it in me to go and travel, halfway across the world and just, So maybe I'll do it in another life. And you mentioned that you hadn't been out of Thailand for a few years, and that for whatever spontaneous reason, you had typed in airfare to Kathmandu, and you had looked in the whole thing except for pushing the buy the ticket button.
Yep. It was like
And
2 days before. It's really crazy because I've been
excuse
thinking about Nepal. I've traveled around all of Southeast Asia, Burma, Cambodia, Vietnam, Laos, Malaysia, all of the countries. And I have YouTube videos where what I would do is I would go in and it would be like Mandalay walking, Hanoi walking, um, uh, Borobudur walking, which is in a really amazing place in Indonesia. So basically I go in and be an observer and take photos and then compose some music and put all the photos together in an abstract dream tour of the space.
yeah,
It's like that was how I was preserving it for others to experience.
yeah.
Um, and I'd never ever been to Nepal. And it's crazy because here at my healing center in Chiang Mai, before the Covidius times, there were loads of particularly young people traveling through. I do the light party every week, and then they would be going off. And often they go to Pokhara, which is uh, like the equivalent of Chiang Mai in Nepal. And I have a whole lot
Wow.
of stuff like singing bowls and everything um, from Nepal. I have good friends from Nepal, and they're always saying, "Well, you could go here, and we'll introduce you to this." And it's like, just creeping in on the edge of my mind. And then, okay, finally, okay, after not traveling since 2019, which I was told, before the pandemic, I had 7 years of inner work to do. It's like, okay, fine, I'm cool with that. But it was like, no, this is the time. It's the first time I got a re-entry permit, which allows me to travel out and come back in when I got
Okay.
my new visa extension. So it's like, where am I going? Well, I've already booked going to the San people in the Kalahari Desert. They're the Bushmen. There's an elder. I can see him very clearly. I'm meant to meet him and learn learn indirectly, play music and just so I just when I book a ticket like that, there's no agenda. It's like just go book, see what shows up.
Right.
And so it's like, well, yeah. But I said to Spirit, am I meant to go now to Kathmandu?
But that was before you spoke with me. You
Before I spoke to you, I
okay.
said,
Right.
give me a confirmation this is on my path. This is like a soul journey.
Right.
And then you said all that. It's like, what? That's so crazy. But, you and I can see, like I saw where you in your past life, where you lived in Paris, and I could describe, the wallpaper and the bed and, um,
That was my deathbed. Right.
yeah. So I could see, these are cities. It's like the monk showing up on the TV. It's a city. Now, I've been a yogi for 40 years, and I do Dzogchen, White Nyingma, Tibetan Qigong. So I was in the fourth group of disciples for that. So things show up, but I'm a monk. In my heart, I just do every day, every day, every day. I do my practice, and I've woven together Taoism and Ayurveda and all the different ancient traditions with ether physics in a way that I'm creating what Steiner would call, a thought form, a visual thought form for particular purposes, like for bringing more resonance and clarity and phase conjugation to Gaia. So that's what I'm doing in my heart. I'm not working with people. I'm not, I gave up being a yoga therapist like 10 years ago. I told Spirit, don't send me any more of these people. But if I like to work, I've always seen it as healing the healers. Like when I was a massage therapist, after I, stopped working in Silicon Valley, um, I would always work on the other massage therapists, because that was just what I did. It's like, oh, okay, well, do energy work with this person or whatever. And that's so I could see that you're at the end of a hose pipe, right? Of stuff that things. Susan, you can do. Oh, and you can do that. And by the way, you can do this. And at the same time, this is going on. This is going to happen. Deal with it. Just do it, right?
Right.
And that's the bodhisattva path. And I've always admired the bodhisattva. I mean, it's just like such a surrender.
But
Um,
but but I don't think I'm a bodhisattva because all I do is complain and bitch about how this better be
that,
the last time. Like I am done. But you know what?
no,
I
no,
know I
no,
had
no,
a
no, no.
choice.
No,
I
you
know
don't
I had
get
a
out of
choice.
it. No, you don't get out of it that easy. You're actually doing the work. You are really doing the work.
Oh, I'm doing the work. I'm working my butt off. And I'm thinking, if I
So-
do this until I hit the grave, like I even make jokes and say, I'll work the morning that I'm going to die. I'll go home for lunch and then I'll cross. I'm like, okay, then do I get a nice long break? But the truth is, and I'm only supposed to speak the truth now. Somebody tasked me with this or cursed
yeah,
me with it like 3 weeks ago.
yeah,
I had a choice on this life because I remember coming in saying, I don't really have to be there. But you know what? I'm going to go. And I knew there was going to be people that I loved here and that there were some problems. And I didn't tell you this, but some of them I thought, I'm not leaving them on the earth right now on their own when it is going to be a tumultuous shit show. And
yeah.
one of those people is my son Gabriel and my other two kids, but other people as well. And I said, I'm not, I can go down there, no
Yeah.
problem
So
to
you're
deal with.
showing up. That's the thing. I work with people who show up. The people who are all talk and they have martyrdom and bullshit stories. I'm not interested. I mean, it's great for them to feel sorry for themselves and to piss all over everyone else emotionally, but not time is of the essence in a
That,
beautiful way, which is that where you spend that time is where you're showing the grace of your heart to those who you're meant to touch. And that's what you're doing because I will say yes to upstairs. I
right.
don't say yes to people, screw that.
Right. I never say yes to people. But what else am I doing anyways? So I might as well. If they want me to do that, what do I care? What am I going to do? I might as well.
Yeah, exactly. It's more fun that way. I mean, you
Right.
certainly have crazy stories that come out.
Oh, yeah. There's no shortage of that at all. So then you said generously, and I thought the earth was rotating in a different direction. You said, Susan, I will go to Kathmandu, and you don't have to, and I will go on your behalf. I thought, did the heavens just part? Wait a minute. Did I hear that right? He's going to go on my behalf and film some of this and see what the magic is, see what the heck it is. I mean, you could end up going there and maybe they'll say, we have no idea who she is or what this is, or who the hell knows? But we already know something interesting is going to happen. We can have the intention of that's what you're doing and something else. It doesn't involve me going to Kathmandu in this lifetime.
Yeah,
So,
and you see, can you imagine from my point of view, that is such a pleasure because what I feel empathy for is you actually doing the bodhisattva journey. It's just I'm not tasked with that. I'm tasked with operating at a meta level, at a level where I can facilitate. So it's like if you take 1,000,000 joules of your energy, by me spending 100 joules, we can get the whole thing flowing because you're the resonator. You know, I forgot to tell you, I don't know if you were listening to this, but over the last day, I was saying, I'm inviting you into my dream space so we can
no.
do the real work there.
Oh,
But
no, really?
yeah. Because I do dream work, but I'm really pretty pathetic at it. But I've been doing Tibetan dream yoga. I do the practices. And I've been, lucid dreaming since the 95 or something. But I'm not a master. It's like, that's just one of the things I'm meant to do. But if you're,
You want to know the quickest trick for dream work? Because I've been teaching it for so long and I've taught thousands of people and legit lives have changed. I don't know how many, even hundreds, maybe even almost everyone. Okay. So we can understand our dreams. And that's a whole thing in and of itself. And we don't go to dream dictionaries or anything, right? It's the language of our soul. And that's what it is, people. Okay. And it's not our subconscious. We are actually traveling, we're going places. Okay. So, with that premise, let's say you get really good at understanding your dreams and you're even lucid dreaming, which at this point, most of my dreams are lucid dreams. Okay. Which only means for people that are watching that you're aware that you're dreaming in the dream. Okay. So, it will mean nothing as far as changing your life. It'll just mean you're good at interpreting your own dreams and you'll be entertained by your dreams. But if you want traction in your life, you have to do something to honor the dream. That's it. So, and it can be
okay.
that's the magic
In other
key.
words, well, I spend a lot of my time, like 99% of my time in solitude. That's my deliberate choice.
Right.
And, just every morning, like just before we did this, I'm on my contemplation walk. And that's where I delve into things like my dreams. And, my mother was a Jungian psychiatrist.
Oh,
So,
very interesting. I don't know. Well, that should be helpful with the dreams, but
yeah,
maybe there could be too much of a Western analytical mindset
sure,
to
sure,
it.
sure. Oh, no, and I don't pay any attention to their symbols. Um, particularly the Freudian ones are so puerile. And but anyway, um, the thing is, I'm just used to that. Uh, Jung's, yeah, the exploration of the unconscious, and that's where. But that's actually really good. So I'll bear that in mind, honoring
But
the
but but
dream.
but but there's things we can't say it's just the unconscious because we can have transpersonal dreams. I had a dream about Rumi like
Um,
many years ago. I had never heard of Rumi, which is embarrassing in and of itself. And in the dream, I'm being there's a man and and I just say he's a foreign man. I know he's not from America. He slides a poem across the table to me and says, "Here, read this poem." I said, "I don't like poems. I don't want to read it." He goes, "Just read it anyways." So I'm reading it and it's saying things like, "I'm swimming the widest oceans, I'm climbing the mountains," and I fall into the poem and I live an entire life, a Rumi life. I come back out, the entire life. I sit back and went, now that's a poem. And he says, well, I'm an ancient teacher of Rumi, and you just read it the right way. Now, he was so clear with the name, and this is when there was only dial up computers, right? So I went on my dial up computer and typed in Rumi, and lo and behold, you know, he's the most prolific love poet of all time. And there was this man, Sharam Shiva, in New York, who was doing workshops at Omega and had written a number of books. And So I just sent him a thing saying, I had this dream, even though I never ask other people what the dreams mean. And I teach people, don't ask other people for the meaning of your dreams. Okay. Anyways, he said, well, you were initiated in Rumi. That's how he initiates people, is in dreams. And it was the 800th anniversary of his death or his birth. And I
No
said, well, will
wonder.
you come to Mystic, Connecticut and do an event here? He said, yes. So he came on a train with all his guys and these Persian rugs and all this stuff. And everyone in Little Mystic, Connecticut said, how the did you get this guy to come here and do this? I said, I had a dream. So it was held at this venue that was called the Dragon's Egg Yoga Studio that I did dream work at for 20 years. We could fit maybe 150 people easily in there. And before everyone got there, he said, Susan, sit and lay like horizontally so you can hear the sound of my voice as I read the Rumi to make sure the sound's all right. So I'm laying there, and his voice, I say, is like chocolate velvet. Like if you look him up, Sharam Shiva, you can probably he used to have on his website, him reading the poems. It's chocolate velvet. He started saying these Rumi poems. I just wept. It was too much. It was
Mm.
almost too much. And after that, I started writing poetry for a while. I didn't want to. It had gotten a hold of me. And then even after that, for years, I would read one Rumi poem a day like an oracle. Just, how can we say that is in our subconscious or that's something rumbling around? Or this is a freaking transpersonal dream.
Yeah.
Something larger than me and my understanding gifted me that dream. And it changed the course to some degree of my life. So,
Yeah.
how do we honor that dream? In the case of the Rumi dream, I honored it by asking Sharam Shiva. I had a dream last night I was flying. I haven't honored that dream yet. So, but what could I do? I could, look at things about flying. I could make it has usually simpler is better. I even say if you can't think of a way to honor the dream, go outside, pick up a rock and carry it in your pocket for 3 days. That'll
Mm.
that'll change the momentum because
Mm.
the larger aspect of ourselves and even our helpers in the transpersonal world will say, "Oh, well, this is interesting now. We've got someone paying attention to a dream and they're honoring it in some way." Oh, the dream recall goes way up and the quality of the dreams go way up. I say, try it for 30 days. Believe nothing I say. Try it for 30 days and see if it doesn't legit change your life. And if you see a dream, and we're all dreaming the future, by the way, if you see a dream that is not looking too good, your future, well, then you do something different in your waking life. I wrote a book on it, how to navigate life with dreams. And if everything looks good and you go by feeling more than content or context in the dream,
Mhm.
then you just stay the course. It's really very simple. The Freudian types, okay, and the Jungian types put way too much complication. I teach it. My mother was Native American. I didn't learn anything from her. Well, she was mixed Native American, but it's not like that culture was stripped from us. But this is the indigenous way of understanding dreams, especially the Northeast tribes were obsessed with dream work. Yeah, I'm very passionate about it. I can't like just have an everyday conversation about dreams.
No. Do you want to hear the most significant dream I had recently?
Yes.
It's, shall we say, highly symbolic. I was in a place, it's like in India. They're really filthy in India. They have the toilets in Delhi and it says, do not urinate outside the toilet. And everyone's peeing against the sign. It stinks.
Oh my god.
So
Oh my
I'm in
god.
this place that's like a spa, an old spa that's run down. And I want to go to the toilet. And there's literally shit all over the floor. There's no way to avoid standing in the shit. The shit is everywhere. And I want to poop. And it's totally gross, but I've got no choice. And when I go, it's just literally, there's more and more and more shit. And it's very vivid shit. It's like, real shit. It's not just, and I'm
It's not
wading through this.
theoretical shit. It's real.
It's the real stuff. And obviously, from my point of view, the symbolism is we're all having to deal with our shit and everyone else's shit right
That's right.
now.
That's right.
And
But
So
but but how did the dream end? It ended. Is that how it ended?
I did get out of the place, but I was still covered in shit. But at least I was able to walk out.
And what was the feeling? That's
Feeling was
the
this is like being in boarding school because I was sent to
oh,
boarding school when I was 8, and um, I have to deal with this stuff. I was literally shit scared. You know, I was 8 years old. My feet were curled under all the time. I was in terror, and so I pooped my pants as a young boy from fear. And I remember having yellow shit because I was just like my gut was so distraught. So it's an important part of my journey to heal that, acknowledge it. But it's like this is a shameful thing I have to deal with, and there's no way out. It's just like if I react, if I internalize it, I'm screwed. So shit happens. You know, it literally is that kind of thing. And it
except
was,
for, I don't need to remind you that the little 8-year-old boy is still within you. You're 7, you're 9, you're 8.
oh, absolutely, yeah,
And so when we have these dreams, I'm also trained as a soul recovery practitioner. I have all these titles. I don't even like to go through them all. So one of the things we can do, especially when we have a dream like that, we can say, well, no, I thought I already processed all this.
no,
But the
you never
dream is
have.
right. The dream is saying, well, you know what? We can go one more layer
Yeah,
deeper. Let's bring this up right now. And as a matter of fact, we're going to give it to you now because now you can handle it in the way that needs to be handled.
yeah,
So I would recommend strongly to do something to honor that little 8-year-old boy, like whatever that would, it could be go out and have an ice cream, or I don't know what did you like when you were an 8-year-old boy that you felt you couldn't get anymore, and that's something you could do even if it's illogical, especially as a monk,
mm,
not practical. Monks aren't supposed to go and have ice cream, or are they? And go and have an ice
yeah,
cream or something and tell your little 8-year-old self inside, hey, I hear you. Like
mm,
like like, we don't have I'm in charge now. We're not gonna stand with all this shit.
exactly,
I
yeah,
mean, that's it. Like, I'm in charge now. We may be subjected to some degree, but if it becomes to everyone else's shit, but if it becomes overwhelming, guess what? We'll walk away from it.
yeah.
There's
Well,
only
I
so
think I agree with you, and to my mind, the whole purpose of part of the journey of being an adult is to reparent the child. Because I
yes.
remember when I was 8, um, I wrote a 4-page letter to my parents. They sent
Mm,
me to a Jesuit boarding school. It was really hardcore.
don't get
Uh,
me going on the Jesuits. I
yeah, I
mean,
know.
okay,
But
that's a whole nother problem.
literally, apparently, my mother cried for 3 days, but my father said no. And I'm extremely grateful that I was sent there because I experienced. I mean, not only did I learn Latin and Greek, that was just an amazing education. I also was the way I preserved myself, the way I kept my soul alive was by reading all the classics. So I literally read everything, from Jane Austen to Dostoevsky, and I spent all my time in that world. So my imaginal world became very real and very strong. But the biggest blessing I had was that my Latin master when I was 12 was Michael Tolkien, the youngest son of J.R.R. Tolkien. And
Wow!
all
He was
those
a Jesuit?
stories.
Wait a minute,
No,
Tolkien
no,
had a
no,
son
no.
who
He
was
was
a
he
Jesuit?
was a master. He wasn't one of the
Okay,
priests. Uh,
alright.
he, but he was. He had. Well, they used to call it shell shock. Um, post traumatic from World War Two, and
Right.
so he basically retired there. But he never went to communion. He never took communion, and that really inspired me. But he let me keep my bicycle in his garden shed. So it's like, and he told
Mm.
my parents I had a very strong mind, um, which was very affirming for me because basically my thing. my mantra was "fuck you" in boarding school. It's like,
That would have been my
fuck
mantra.
you. I'm going to do. I'll do enough to conform on the outside because I don't like being beaten, but
Right.
otherwise, fuck you. So I used to get away with all sorts. But you see, now I've been able to, by the reparenting process over so many years, being able to be extremely grateful for boarding school because that was the opportunity that my parents sacrificed for. To it's expensive.
Right.
To give me this opportunity to shift from my path of fate to my path of destiny, and I became a monk basically internally by observing the self-discipline of the Jesuits
Interesting.
and living in that energy and realizing, well, this is who I really am. I really love the ascetic life on my terms. It's not like somebody
Right.
says, well, now you're not going to eat for the next 20 years and you're going to, crap in a hole in the ground or whatever. No, fuck that. But um, I think that's for all of us, if we can expand our mind to understand from the soul's perspective, what is the annealing process that it takes to forge the sword of Michael, of your soul, so that it can be fierce in the world
Right.
and do what's needed,
Right.
then we show up. So all the things like that I can see all sorts of stuff. I don't talk about it. I don't say I'm doing this, that, and the other. It's just it shows up, and if it's appropriate, I share it. But those cities, I think, are phenomena that are of value, and in particular, they give you confidence. Like I have been bilocated twice in my life.
Intentionally.
No, I mean I was bilocated.
Hold on. Right. You were bilocated. Did you intentionally bilocate?
No, no.
Okay.
Okay,
So
first
so
time, I'll tell you the first time. I was on top, it was on 8899. It's a very important date in the Mayan calendar process. So I flew down with my friend Cindy, arrived at 6 p.m., walked in without having to pay, walked
you
up
you 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 flew down where? Where did you fly
to,
down?
to Chichen Itza,
Okay.
right. So walked in, walked up the pyramid, sat down and meditated. And I found out later that Cindy's daughter saw me in the apartment in Daly City and was so freaked out, refused to go back in. So, you
And
know,
what were you doing in the apartment? Just
I've
kind of
got no
poking
freaking
around?
idea. It was just like my body, I think it's like uh, Mrs. Wood, because we don't know her real name. Um,
Yes.
her, her being shown the ice cube flowing, you know, being thrown out of her cup. The cities are just there. When we ego attach them, say, look, I'm this great, I can fly across the river, I don't have to pay the ferryman, whatever, what the fuck.
Right.
Then that's the biggest trap. But the things that just show up and we're not attached to, they can be of service. So coming back to this trip on your behalf, um, I'm the emissary to meet the emission of your soul. You remember we talked about that.
Yeah.
And I've seen him. I can see him really clearly. He's got a white Nepali hat on. He's got the long shirt and the jacket, got a mustache, quite young in his 30s. And he's in a shop somewhere in Kathmandu. Now, whether he understands our connection, I think there will be a little bit of recognition. Whether it's talked about, I have no idea. But it
Well, you
feels
can bring
like,
it up. Oh, and please do.
yeah,
Right.
my sense is that this is stuff that destiny has set us up to do. And those are things that they're freaking fun to do. They're just awesome. I mean, the rest of life is what the hell? Yeah, you had another, um, you know, you had another chocolate cake after dinner, whatever. And it's boring bullshit. But the really awesome stuff is the wacky phenomena come,
Right.
you surrender to them, and then the poetry of your life is expressed. So you
Perfect.
become the poem.
Yeah, that's perfectly put. I became the poem.
Yes.
Rumi said, "You that's what that dream meant for me."
He
So I
said,
don't I mean that was the whole meaning of the dream.
okay. Yeah,
Right?
it makes sense to
I
me.
lived the life of Rumi. So after that, I didn't consciously say I'm going to live the life of Rumi, but I stopped controlling or even more being scared of all the strange phenomena happening to me all the time. I thought, well, my God, if I've got a poem from Rumi, the most well-read Western love poet, even though he was not Western, and and the poetry, is it love like as in a sexual romantic way, or is it about union with the divine? And I would say it's both. And I'm thinking, I don't know how I got so lucky to have that, but I don't need to worry about a thing too much if I've got Rumi. And it took over my life for a little while to some degree. Like I couldn't. I used to make these jokes. My kids were younger, and when this all happened, and I'd be out, mowing the lawn on the ride-on lawnmower with my headphones on, listening to, Willie Nelson or whatever. And all of a sudden I'd get this feeling that I had to write a poem. I had to write, and I couldn't continue mowing the lawn. Like, and the kids knew if I'm on that ride on with the headphones on, do not stop me unless there's a fire. You know, it was my happy time. But I'd have this thing and I'd have to go stop the lawnmower, run upstairs, and it would just the poem would pour out of me. And then I could go back and I hid the poems in my computer. Like I didn't it was just very strange. I didn't tell anybody I was doing this because I was like embarrassed or whatever. I didn't understand exactly what was happening. I just thought something has happened. And it's that roomy. And my life did feel a lot like climbing mountains. And I have oh my God, I have a lot of stories like that in relation to dreams. So this is when life becomes good. So even when we're standing in shit, right? And we got everybody else's shit around us, there's still magic all around. I used to lecture a lot. They used to invite me back east at University of New Hampshire every fall. I spoke all over MIT, Boston University, a whole bunch of local colleges, but especially University of New Hampshire. I don't know why I would, tell my story about dreams and how we can navigate life with them and all that. And then I would say always at the end, oh, because it was this, the students were supposed to write, what did they think about, my lecture? And I always got these rave reviews. I was the favorite and all this, they just loved it. I was, pretty theatrical in my own way. And I'm like very blunt and I'm swearing. I'm like, there's no facade. It's all, and it agreed with them. One of the classes, one of the girls said, I really like that Susan Morgan. I just wish I could believe her stories. And my knee jerk reaction was, she's accusing me of lying. And so this is a story I would tell them at UNH all the time. And I'd say, oh no, it's even much worse than being accused of lying. It's much worse. And I would say to the students, you know what it is? They're like, what? I said, she could not conceive that life could have magic. And if you are in college and you are getting ready to face life, oh my God, you better have at least some sense that magic and grace can intervene in your life. Otherwise, you can fucking forget it because
Yeah,
life will beat you down to a goddamn pulp, and you can guarantee that. So, what will require you to get back up is grace and magic plenty of times. So, do not go forth in the world without those two things, or at least the concept that they could exist. Otherwise, it's a wrap. It's a
absolutely.
miserable,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
And
a miserable life.
all it requires is showing up, not being a perfect actor or whatever. It's just permission. And when that permission is granted, the candle of grace is lit in the center of the heart. And that's how the etheric comes into the materium. And that's where we move outside the servant, the left brain, into the heart, which is the emperor. You know, it's the secret of the golden flower. And living one's life on those principles. The funny thing is, yeah, everyone else can blame you and say you're an idiot and you're ungrounded or whatever. But joy can only arise in the presence of magic.
That's it.
Happiness can arise when you're going shopping and you get a new car for 10 minutes. Well, that's just psychological. Everyone's like, oh, I want to be happy. No, I don't want to be happy. I invite joy.
I like it. So when you go to Kathmandu, which you're going early in August, right?
Yeah.
How are you going to like do live feeds?
Oh, yeah,
Not,
sure. Actually, you know, it'd be really fun if you're up for it. We can do some of these.
I'm hoping that's exactly what I'm hoping. That is exactly what I'm hoping. Oh
That
my
would be
God.
so fun because then you can be my navigator and you can say,
Take a left.
you're Google Susan. Go here, do
Oh
this,
my God.
talk to
Oh
this man. And then I can show you the experiences that are coming up and you can tune in. So I'm just like an avatar for you.
oh my God. Like
That'd be so fun.
this is just too much fun and too much luck. I mean, really, honestly, I'm
Well,
excited.
you've given me, I mean, basically, you answered my question to spirit. Why am I going to Kathmandu? Oh, okay, now I know.
Well, that's the original thing, but we'll see what unfolds once you're there, right? Something completely different could fill in. So we don't know.
Yeah,
But we know enough to know we don't know, but you're still showing up. So
absolutely. Oh, there's a
yeah.
poem coming from it too. You
Good.
haven't written a poem for some time, have you?
Mm-mm.
No, there's one that's going to come. It's a very beautiful poem, and it has a different language to it than the normal Rumi ones. Different kind of imagery. Oh, there's a donkey in it. It's Rumi riding his donkey. Yeah, that's a whole nother story, which I'll have to tell you about. But
Mhm.
I would say thank you very much because you joined me in this wacky adventure on YouTube for the first time.
Yeah.
And uh, I, you remember you said, oh, how long do you want to go? I said, oh, maybe an hour or something. I don't mind. I'm open-ended. And you said, oh, maybe 40 minutes. I have no idea, but I think it's
I
been
have
quite
no
long.
idea either. I mean, I'm having fun, so it's all good.
Exactly. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
So
All right.
thank you so much, Susan.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
And
this is really wonderful. Okay, take care then.
okay, you too. I'll
Bye-bye.
talk to you soon. Okay. Bye bye.
Okay.